So have the SBC, move the number, keep the numbers, move your users, and as a last part, if you're working with the likes of, Pure IP or others to deliver into that, then just swing it to cloud delivery. And
yeah. Hi everybody, welcome to this product briefing. Today we're venturing to the Cisco side of the world. So Cisco and Microsoft's much more working together these days in terms of devices and options there. But we're going to dive deep into actually some of my history was Cisco and Cisco Call Manager. And we're going to talk about what's going on with on-prem Cisco Call Manager or Communication Manager, how you might migrate to Webex and Webex in the cloud, and how that affects all your PSTN options. But firstly, I'll just introduce two guests. Matt, if you'd like to go first, please.
Yeah, hi Tom. Matt Hurst from Ribbon. So I'm Technical Director for our as-a-service offerings, enabling partners and operators to integrate into cloud UC platforms like Webex.
Awesome. And Adam?
Hey, I'm Adam Gent. I'm a Principal Product Manager for Webex Calling. Used to do a lot of Microsoft stuff and then got dragged over this way.
Yeah, so everybody on this call's lived on different sides of the fences at different times. So good round knowledge of the whole world. Adam, maybe we could start with you. Kind of before we get into migration options, that there's still a lot of do we say call manager or communications manager? There's a lot of base out there still on-prem, right?
Oh, there is. There's a lot of call manager out there. As long as people want to continue using and supporting it and paying us, we'll be silly to get rid of that. We don't, but we do think it's a better journey. People moving to the cloud. It's easier for them to use. We saw with the pandemic that being able to pick up and go home and just work makes life so much easier. Being anchored to a traditional PBX, whether it's a Cisco one or whether it's an Avaya or a Nortel or anything, moving to that UCaaS product just makes life a lot easier, especially as we then add in, the chat, the messaging, the presence and everything else. It just takes that journey. So for people that are ready to do it, or people that maybe, moving office or downsizing offices, as we've seen people change that conundrum of how they work, it's a great time to start looking at moving from that call manager. And of course, we'd love to keep them within the Cisco family.
Yeah, I think I read a stat, I can't remember if it was Forrester or Gartner, but like 90% of organizations with on-prem BBX have a plan to go to cloud. It's just timing and timeline, really. It
is. It's timing. It's budget. It was always funny the early days of Microsoft. Everyone, it was a 3-year ROI for a Microsoft product, and with the PBX it was 7. So people still want to burn that money out. If you still want to get there. And one of the great things we have is that a lot of the Cisco endpoints that work with Call Manager also work with Webex. So you don't have to rip and replace that entire estate. If you've got phones you bought in the last couple of years, we can take you on that journey, reuse them by all means.
Right, so you can move call control and maybe not endpoints. That makes sense.
That's really important, actually, because we see that in Ribbon as well in terms of customers wanting to do a phase migration, and the endpoints all the way down to PBX SBCs is kind of being able to support that integration and phase migration and not throw away everything you've invested in day one. So yeah, we see the same thing with a lot of enterprises.
And for us, it's very much bring it with it. So if you go back Webex, 18 months, 24 months ago, we only supported Cisco Cubes. We supported registration-based SBCs for bringing your own PSTN. And then we changed that program. We opened it up to, Ribbon and others, because there's no point making somebody change their SBC architecture or reinvent the wheel or buy something else, even though we gave the licenses away for the migration. They've already had it. They're already comfortable with it. So use it, help migrate to us, make it simple.
Yeah, or if they're multi-platform potentially, then like a player like Ribbon can work with different platforms and bring those worlds together.
Completely. And a lot of companies are not a single PBX manufacturer either. If they've grown it through acquisition and mergers, they've probably got different ones in together. We also find customers that while, call manager clusters can all talk to each other, a lot run them independently because they're different business units, but then have SBCs for those on-net calls because they want to save money. So they can continue using those SBCs, move to us, and then work with one of the numerous PSTN providers that Ribbon also work with to move to a cloud delivery. So rather than, have that, the worst part of any migration is always that telephony part. It's the porting of numbers. Will it work? Won't it work? What address was it when we got this? Who can sign it? Worse for some is it a comma? Is it a full stop? Is it neither? And then you go through all that pain. So have the SBC, move the number, keep the numbers, move your users. And as a last part, if you're working with the likes of, Pure IP or others to deliver into that, then just swing it to cloud delivery. And Ribbon lose that SBC on premise, but they still work with others.
So Matt, Adam's teed that up quite nicely there. We're obviously used to talking about Ribbon being some of the massive carrier grade switching in some of the carriers. We talk about, on-prem, typically enterprise, virtual or physical SBCs. But just to set the scene for this conversation, because we're talking with Cisco here, you're dealing with multiple PBXs and multiple scenarios. Can you talk us through kind of the portfolio and what fits where?
Yeah, so as you say, we deal with everything from that on-premise that we just discussed, that migration piece where you need to integrate to an existing call manager or other mixture of PBXs and you want to move into the cloud. So there are that sort of more traditional, what I call enterprise-grade SBCs, either physical or virtual, because some people still need those physical ports for analog devices and stuff. That hasn't gone away yet. But also then it scales up into the cloud. And this is where we're seeing more and more telco operators move to. And they're trying to shift their connectivity from individual trunks down to customers' premises to hit that SBC to then integrate out, more towards this cloud-to-cloud integration. And that sort of program of certification, so the operator can prove their credentials to their end customers that they do work with Webex or they do work with Microsoft. And what we're seeing is more operators needing our larger SBCs, and a lot of them now want to consume it as a service versus just buying a CapEx investment, and they want a service that not only provides the SBC and the integration, but also the API and the automation for that customer engagement, because that's what Cisco and the others are really focusing on as well, is making the customer journey seamless. So it's not a really hard lifting exercise to bring a telco service into the cloud. So the crux of that is making sure that every telco that joins the program to be certified runs through a preset certification program, an enablement program, so that the customers know when they choose that operator, it's going to work with Webex correctly. Yeah.
So there's two steps there, isn't there? Your SBCs obviously work with those all the major players, Teams, Microsoft, Cisco, and Zoom. But also the telcos have to go and certify as a provider for each of those cloud services. So when a customer's moving, they can absolutely use their own Ribbon SBC if they want to. They could put their own in the cloud, but they can also go to one of many carriers that have certified to work specifically with Webex or specifically with Teams.
Yeah, correct. And probably Adam can tell us a little bit more about the different differences between the kind of the local gateway and what we call the Cloud Connects program, the CCP program. But it fundamentally covers both scenarios. So if you've got an enterprise who just wants or has already got or wants an SBC to integrate themselves into the Webex cloud, I think it's a local gateway, but then the cloud to cloud for the operators is the CCP program. So I don't know, Adam, if you want to expand a little bit more around that bit.
Yeah, so if you look at the gateway part, so what traditionally people, when it comes to UCaaS, everyone refers to as direct routing, Microsoft kind of term, and we all have similar programs. So for us in the Webex world, it's either referred to it used to be local gateway. Then we rebranded it to on-premise PSTN, and now we're going to change it to partner-hosted managed gateways.
And this is quite a big change, Cisco, compared to when, I've got dating myself, like 14 years ago when I was in Cisco land, you would have, at the time, your ISR would be your gateway, and then you had, obviously, the cubes. But now I can have a Cisco system, and I can choose Ribbon as my certified gateway.
Yeah, so even with Call Manager, if you're a Call Manager house, a lot would have deployed them with cubes, and then if they're a hybrid house with others. As we move to the cloud, there's no point us working with customers saying, look, you want to get rid of things on premise and move to the cloud, but you need to deploy this new thing to get to the cloud. So we want to enable that journey.
Yep.
But for us, the quicker they get to the cloud, they end up with a better experience. So by using that gateway, and whether that's managed by the customer or whether it's managed by a partner as a service offering, or even we have some partners where they will host a Ribbon SBC in their data centers and multi-tenant it. and deliver those services into Webex, because they still have other value adds they have. Because Webex is only part of the UCaaS world, and Cisco also has, we have Webex contact centers, we have the CPaaS offering from when we acquired IMI and others. But there's whole other larger parts of the telephony world as well. Legacy systems, key systems, turret systems, the list goes on. And you have people who host those and deal with them. So we have to have that integration method. And that's one of the things we try and push is, while we'd love you to move everything to Webex, we know nothing can. We are not going to go and suddenly start having a turret system for traders. That's not, that's a niche part of it, but it's so important.
Yeah, if you're in that scenario, you're going to be hybrid, quote unquote, for a long, long time, because you're running some local systems. Your Hoot and Holler, your Tannoys, your whatever it is.
Yeah, back in the day, I used to do work with the trading banks, and in the data centers, there's a 1 meter exclusion zone around their turret PBXs. And you weren't allowed to go in it. They were that worried that you'd go in and trip or something and take the system down.
Yeah.
Millions and billions of dollars of risk in real time.
That's not going to change anytime soon, is it?
No.
Exactly. So let's work with them. Let's move all the trade, the back office, the audit people, and everything else to Webex, and we'll still work with the trading systems.
So that's the local gateway scenario. What about the Cisco equivalent of in Microsoft world, the Operator Connect, the cloud-to-cloud carrier to Webex?
So I guess, you've got Operator Connect and an Operator Connect accelerator. And like other UCaaS products, we have our own version of that. So we have the Cloud Connect for Webex calling program, which is for PSTN providers to connect into Webex. That's the akin to the Operator Connect. And then what we also have is the adjunct program, which is what we refer to as the enablement program, which is working with the likes of Ribbon. So that's the kill to Operator Connect accelerator.
Oh, thanks for decoding that. It's good to understand how they parallel up.
Yeah. Well, we can't quite use the same name. I'm sure there's some lawyers who wouldn't quite like it.
Yeah. Marketing as well. We have to just do something slightly different each time.
Exactly. So the enablement program is, for the carriers who maybe already connect to Microsoft and want to connect to us or to Zoom and work with Ribbon and others to come in where they get the most bang for their buck because they do one API integration. Ribbon take care of the API integration into us and others, and they deal with it. And one of the things is so Webex Calling is a fully featured PBX behind it. It's been around for a long time. It's built on the genesis of the BroadSoft platforms. So there's a lot of stuff in there. And we also have dedicated instance, which you can go back to, which is effectively Call Manager. And we also have contacts and other stuff. So we put PSTN providers through this torturous testing program, which takes like 6 weeks if you're lucky.
Yeah, I've heard it's decently intense. Like, you do take it very seriously, which is nice
to
hear.
It is. And we test stuff that may not even exist in the product anymore, or may not be there, but may be there in the future. Because we want to ensure that when people move to a telephony solution with PSTN, that all those scenarios work, that, a call transfer comes in and goes out again and goes around and goes back, and that it all works, because that's what we're doing. It's a telephony platform at the heart. We want that to work. So anyone who connect direct to us, and there's less and less of those because more and more are going the enablement route, we put through that program. And then to make sure the enablement providers can do a lot of that testing on our behalf, we put them through that testing twice. We made them find 2 different PSTN providers. We took one and put them through the program and said, right, now you know what to normalize, you know what to look for, you know what to fix. That second pass with the other PSTN provider needs to be clean. We'll run through it. We don't want to find anything, because we want that enablement provider, so Ribbon, to take all that worry away from us, take all that angst, pre-normalize and everything, but still have that same level of assurance that when those calls are coming into Webex, there's no difference to whether you're directly connected, you go through enablement provider. And we don't announce a difference, because there is no difference to us. It's just a different route of coming in. But to the end customer, the end user, it's still a fully tested, fully bedded out program and connection.
That makes sense. And is that the same program for, you mentioned some different scenarios there. So you've got kind of Webex as in multi-tenant, you've got Webex dedicated call manager type scenarios in the cloud. You've got Webex contact center. Does that apply to some of those, all of those? How's that work?
No. So what we have is we're trying to simplify things as well. So we're trying to have a single PSTN connection into the core of the Webex products. The Webex meeting stack is slightly outside of that because there's many inbound calls and it's a slightly different.
Yeah.
But if you look at the callings family to start with, we have Webex Calling, which sometimes gets referred to as multi-tenant. That's the one that has its DNA in the BroadSoft estate. We then have what we refer to as dedicated instance. Now, this is Call Manager ran in Cisco data centers. The platform is managed by Cisco, but the customer and partner manage the configuration. So the partner still, offer a managed service. But it's
does that feel exactly like what Call Manager on-premise? Is it different, or is it literally like as if it's an instance?
No, it's literally the same. Okay, so you don't get access to some stuff, there's no point you changing an IP address of a box because you don't want to do that.
Yeah.
But in terms of configuring phones, users, routing tables, it's all there. You get access, you configure it.
Good to know.
So for those who, like Call Manager, just want to move Call Manager but want to get off premise, we have dedicated instance. But what we will see is speak to the partners and look at the features that are really needed. Because sometimes people think they need a dedicated instance because of a certain feature, but it's there on the multi-tenant. It's just called something a bit different, or there's a different way of doing something.
Yeah.
But the two systems also talk. We have customers who will have the majority of their customers on multi-tenant, and then we'll have some on the dedicated instance platform, because again, if there's certain use cases where there may have a very particular integration to a back office system or something that we still cannot support on multi-tenant. So they can have both. And then we have contact center. So the Webex contact center works with Webex Calling. We also sell it to anyone who has a PBX or a phone to take agent calls. And again, that uses the same PSTN connections. So it's one program, bring it in, that PSTN provider can route calls to those, or even with the local gateway, we can do the same. So it's one PSTN platform feeding all those other things. And we are going to expand that. So the CPaaS product, we're going to start doing the same for that. I was on calls yesterday about that one.
Oh, there you go. Breaking news.
Well, it'd be, it's a process, but
so let's get a bit. That's really helpful to understand the different scenarios. So we kind of understand the brain of the PBX being in the cloud or Webex Contact Center. We understand that there are certain operators that have worked with the likes of Ribbon to have a certified core and a way to integrate. So I presume you can go to Webex and you'll see a list of carriers that you could work with.
Yep.
What does this look like from an end customer point of view? I'm 3,000 seats and I'm on Call Manager N-2. I'm deciding to go to cloud. What does that journey look like?
So that journey starts with we have some tooling that will allow us to look at that configuration. We import and export, analyze it, tell you what we can support, tell you what we can't support. We still say, work with the partners that you're working with before, because they can interpret that, they can look at those reports, they can figure out actually, this part may not be there, but do it in this way.
So that would be your existing Cisco partner. So if you're running Call Manager, you almost definitely have a partner you worked with. They'll know about this journey to cloud.
Yeah. If you're a large organization and you're doing it yourself, of course, we'll still work with you. But it's doing that analysis, looking what it looks like. Then we see what phones we can reuse, see what investments need to be made. And then look and say, look, we can either move you to dedicated instance or we can move you to multi-tenant. But to us, it's really just moving you to Webex. That bit behind it shouldn't matter too much. You're just landing on the platform.
Mm-hmm.
And once they're ready to go, we can then start that migration process. If you've got a Ribbon SBC on premise, connect that into Webex. It's a fairly straightforward configuration through a web UI on both sides. Set that up, and then on the Ribbon, just start routing calls, A or B. You do the old LDAP lookups like we've done for years of figuring out if someone's migrated or not. So,
and go on, Matt, sorry.
I was going to say, we're engaged with quite a lot of Cisco partners who are going through this process at the moment and looking to use the SBCs as that sort of local gateway to do the migration. And they're kind of understanding that benefit and power of having some device, independent, agnostic, that works with, an Avaya and maybe a ShoreTel and a CCM on premise. And then
here's the great thing for a partner in that scenario is that if they, from a partner point of view, looking after that customer, if they get the ribbon and then they're managing it, as you say, it's going to integrate to all the existing systems. It's going to be a part of the ongoing story. If they've also got Teams seats or they've also got Zoom or whatever else, that can deal with the carrier connectivity for all those different scenarios as well.
Yeah, exactly. And we see the same thing in the carrier world, where the carriers who want to provide their telco services cloud to cloud, they want to be able to offer that to their customers, whether the customers go Microsoft or they go Cisco or they go Zoom or another. They want to be able to support and certify themselves. So whichever direction their customers go in, they're able to say, yep, we're certified. Because if they don't say, yep, then the customer will look elsewhere. They'll look inside the Webex to see who else is certified to provide calling in that geography.
Yeah, and
sorry, Tom, just on that. We actually work with some PSTN providers who say their main geography is the US, for example, or Europe, but they have customers who have a small branch office in Kuala Lumpur or somewhere. And they'll work to put a small ribbon gateway into that country and contract it, so it's still one PSTN provider, and bring that into us through the local gateway route. So we're still respecting the local laws and everything else, because telephony is so regulated, it's a nightmare.
Yeah. So the equivalent of in the Microsoft world, we take kind of DR as a service. The carriers picking a certified solution for the platform, but they're running a dedicated instance of that SBC to share to their customers.
Yeah. So where they can't, do a fully on-net cloud to cloud solution because maybe the local laws don't allow it, or it's too complicated, or it's a small market for them, they'll still work and do that, the equivalent of that DR as a service and bring it in. So it's working with the partners, both the telephony partners, the PSTN providers, to make sure you can do that whole thing. And we offer all those different options with Ribbon and others together.
Awesome. So Matt, if carriers want to know more, I guess there's two angles here, isn't there? There's carriers and operators that want to support. Maybe a lot of listeners to this podcast are already on Operator Connect and want to expand that story into other UCaaSs, or they want to get into that local SBC scenario with customers. What's the best step forward for them?
So, the best step for the operator is, reach out to your local Ribbon sales rep team or system engineers. They know all about all the different programs we have under Ribbon Connect. We can take you on that journey and explain all the different solutions we can offer with either the local gateway, sort of direct routing integration, or the cloud-to-cloud mechanism. And we are engaged with a number of operators who've started the journey with one particular UCaaS, and they're now expanding to more and more UCaaS platform integration. I'm
seeing that as a trend with the operators I talk to, that they're having to support the top 3 UCaaSs for their customers, because the customers want to work with a carrier that maybe we're 100% Webex today, but we might do something different in the future through M&A or whatever. Or the reality, as Adam said earlier, is any large customer is a mishmash just because of changes over time. Like, we want you certified in all the big players.
Yeah, I'd rather think it was people moving off Teams to Webex than the other way around. But,
And the key benefit that we provide for the operator is, obviously one is the onboarding and the certification, as Adam explained earlier. We went through it twice rather than just once, so we know how hard that is, but we take away that pain of the onboarding for them and the integration. We also take away any sort of risk of having to maintain APIs for the automation going forward. And we also enable a platform where customers can potentially self-service the numbers they're given from the telco and choose which UCaaS they go to, and potentially move them between UCaaS platforms in the future. If they're migrating, as Adam wants, off of Teams perhaps and into Webex, as they do that over time, they can self-service through the portal, which means that the operator doesn't have a large, complex, service team having to do lots of reconfigurations in their core network.
It's just nice to know you've got that flexibility, even if you're not particularly bad. It's nice to know you've got the option, because who knows what happens when you acquire a different business unit or a different company, people move between them. The ability to reroute those numbers to different solutions is a nice thing to have.
Yeah, and it's not even the UCaaS products, as we said before. There's always systems which are going to be separate, whether it's traders or others. And, with the Ribbon platform and others, they can route into all of those. And so it's still one interface. You're just choosing where it goes. And for us, we'll take what we can. And
so, Adam, for the end users, like we might have people listening who manage voice estates. Odds are, again, they're multi-platform. There's definitely a lot of Cisco Call Manager out there. What's the first step on their journey? What should they do? Because we talked about earlier, everybody's kind of working out how they go to the cloud or hybrid on some timeline. How do they move that forward?
I mean, the first step is, if you're working with a Cisco partner, continue talking to that Cisco partner. They know what they already have. They've probably been supporting them for years.
Yep.
And they can probably articulate that journey to Webex straight away because they know the estate. But, by all means, look at webex.com, sign up for a trial, have a play around. It's there. It's easy to use. We got Cisco calling plans to trial, numbers to come in and test with and see if you like it.
Awesome. Well, thanks, guys. I hope we've decoded for the community all the different pieces of the puzzle there, and it's great to really understand how that all hangs together. So I appreciate the time.
Super stuff. Thanks, Tom.